Ladies, gentlemen, and of course, everybody in between, welcome back to Out of Spec Renew. I'm your host, Declan Cav, and I like electric cars. I work on all kinds of weird old electric cars, and a question I get a lot is, what car do you daily drive? You've all seen the title, you know it's not this. It's this! This is my 1979 Unique Mobility Electrek. No, it's not a conversion. No, I didn't make it. This is a ground-up electric car made right here in Colorado from 1979 to 1982. And this one is VIN number 1. So let me tell you about what it's like daily driving this, because I do actually daily drive this, for better or for worse. So, like I said, this is not a conversion. This is not a car that I built. This is a ground-up electric vehicle built in, this specific one, 79, by a company called Unique Mobility up in Englewood, Colorado. They made around 50 to 75 of these. The exact number isn't known. I've even asked the CEO of the company, John Gould, and he didn't know. But yeah, this one in particular is VIN number 1. Now, we don't really know if that means this is the first Electrek or the first in the panel van configuration. Let's talk about that. The Electrek came in 3 different body configurations, and this one is the panel van. And what this means is there's no back window and there's no back seats. There's 2 seats and then a big cargo area in the back with a nice big hatchback from a Mercury Bobcat. This is the 2+2, and this was the most popular car they sold. So this one gets a rear window and back seats. You can also see that the hips are a little bit different on this car. It doesn't quite come out as high. And there's no hatch on this car. There's just a little area here, like a sedan. There's a third configuration called the hatchback. I don't own the hatchback, but it's kind of like the child of these two put together, where it has rear windows and back seats, but still with the hatchback. There's a picture on screen, I'm sure. Let's talk about the specs of the Electrek, and we're in the garage now, by the way, because it's hot outside. And good news with the specs is they give it all to us in the owner's manual. This low production car did have a real and pretty well written owner's manual, although it is just 30 poorly photocopied pages stapled together. But this is the original one. I still have it. And hey, look at that. That's my car on the cover. That's this one. How cool is that? Anyway, specs. Let's get into it, because I'm sure this is going to be accurate and not at all wrong. Unique Mobility claims that the motor in this car, this is not wheel horsepower, this is motor horsepower, is 32 horsepower at the motor. This is wrong. This car has a 96-volt battery, and the controller is capable of up to 400 amps, and it regularly pulls 400 amps, meaning that this is actually a a little more than 51 horsepower car, so they underrated it. I don't know why they did that. They don't give me a torque number, but it's probably somewhere between 50 and 70. I have never taken this to a dyno, because why would I? The other number Unique Mobility gives us is a 100-mile range at 45 miles per hour. That would mean this car, on its 16-kilowatt original battery, got an efficiency of 6 miles per kilowatt hour, which is wrong. I've been driving this car a lot, and I've never been able to get over 3.6, and that was really conservative driving. So I don't think there's any way that this thing can get 6 miles per kilowatt, let alone on that original lead-acid battery. Speaking on the battery, from factory, the Unique Mobility Electrek had 16 6-volt lead-acid batteries wired in series for a 96-volt, 16-kilowatt-hour battery pack, which is not very big in today's standards, but it did them fine. And the top speed on this car is 75 miles per hour, which is wrong. I've never been able to get this car over 65, and I've tried. It does not go faster than that. That was downhill with a tailwind, absolutely flooring it. Yeah, this car cannot go 75. They also claim that the 0 to 30 time is 9 seconds, which is believable, but they conveniently leave out that the 0 to 60 time can be well over a minute. So in the higher end speeds, this car struggles. But in the lower end, it kind of feels a little bit jumpy. Now, this owner's manual is pretty well written and pretty complete, but there are some very interesting sections in this owner's manual, and I'd just like to share a few of my favorites. In the battery maintenance section, we have a warning. Warning, improper use of a booster battery to start a car represents an explosion hazard. I'm pretty sure this is the only owner's manual that warns me about my car exploding. If a battery is frozen, thaw it out first, otherwise it might explode. Twice! They talk about this car exploding. They also seem to not know how to spell Electrek, or at least how to format it, because on the same page, they spell it two different ways. First, Electrek, all as one word, and then further on the page, it's spelled Elec space Trek. Which one is it? They use both interchangeably. In the safety procedures section, it first starts out with, keep a carbon dioxide fire extinguisher nearby for use on any fires that might occur in a vehicle. They recommend you keep a fire extinguisher in the car. Good vehicle, this. Also, I know it's a big thing in modern EVs, you know, talking about the Cybertruck and the F-150 Lightning and the Rivians, towing with an electric car. Well, good news, in the owner's manual, we have a section covering towing with an Electrek. So let's see what it says. Towing a trailer. We do not advise the use of this vehicle for towing a trailer or for towing any other vehicle. Yeah, I could have told you that. Now, if you watch my channel, Electrek Garage, you already know this, but the specs on my car are not exactly stock. While the motor and controller remain stock, along with the transmission and basically everything that dictates the actual driving feel of the car, the battery pack is completely upgraded to use these. This is a battery module out of a 2012 Koda EV, and there are 20 of these below me in the battery pack, giving this car a 32 kilowatt hour battery pack, lithium iron phosphate. That's in a 5S4P configuration, and it's good for a driving range of around 130 miles. I've never done a real range test, but I've never had any issues with the battery pack dying on me, and I've driven it pretty hard. So this new battery pack improves the car greatly. From factory, to charge the Electrek, you would just have a normal wall outlet kind of here, and you would just plug it in using an extension cord. But because I'm using a newer battery, I decided to upgrade it to J7072. This can be used on any public charger or any home charger, and all I gotta do is plug it in, and the car starts charging, although it doesn't actually need to be charged right now. Sorry, car. Some of you might be wondering, if I'm adding J7072, why not go a step further and add CCS DC fast charging? And I wanted to, but the battery pack in this car, like I said earlier, is 96 volts nominal. To use CCS, you generally need over 200 volts, and I could have done a split pack design, but that was too dangerous for my comfort. So, no DC fast charging. This thing can charge at 3.3 kilowatts. It's very slow, but it can be upgraded in the future. Taking a look under the hood, it should surprise no one that this car does not have a frunk. Let me talk you through exactly what's going on under here. There are a couple modern systems in here to support the new battery pack. This includes the modern charger, which is a TSM 2500, and a Thunderstruck BMS, because the car needs a BMS. Over here we have a brand new DC-DC converter. I was rocking the original DC-DC converter, but that decided to kill itself. Up here we have our two ignition contactors. This is for our low voltage system, this is for our high voltage system. You can see our high voltage cables down here. These are coming from the battery pack, go through a fuse and a shunt down in here, and go into the controller, which is mounted in the front bumper. Also over here we have a pre-scaler, which is for the dash displays. We have our 12-volt battery down here. This is a motor cooling fan, which is very loud and very obnoxious. This here is the motor itself. Huge motor for only having 51 horsepower. It's a shunt-wound DC motor, so really cool. And it's capable of regen braking, which is one of the first instances of regen braking being found on a production car. Over here you have your brakes, just like a normal car. This is your throttle box, which just has two potentiometers inside of it and is controlled by the pedal. This is your manual transmission, and that's really all that's going on under the hood. I guess you got fuses. Yeah, that's really it. There's not a lot going on under the hood of this car. It's a pretty simple system. I know the wires are all a mess, but if you know what you're looking at, it makes sense. The inside of this car is not a bad place at all to be. Sure, it's very 70s and 80s and very low production in here, but that doesn't make it uncomfortable. These seats are very soft and plush, and they really hug your body really nicely. You do have this massive center console because just like the EV1 and the Chevy Volt, this has the center-mounted battery, which runs from the front of the car to the back of the car. So here's your batteries. The steering wheel is perfectly positioned. You can see your gauges. You have a couple gauges up here, which we'll go through in a little bit. But yeah, the transmission shifter is easy to reach. It is a gated shifter. You got your radio here, which is fine, and it comfortably seats 2 people. The passenger seat actually has so much legroom, it's amazing. This is actually a very comfortable car. I'm not just saying that. It might look ugly as all get out, but not a bad car to sit in. One of the first questions I asked when I first bought my Electrek was, do the windows open? And yes, they do. You have a knob here that you loosen, and once it's loose, you can take your window and you can pivot it, kind of like on older airplanes. And then when you want to close it, you close it up and you retighten this, and it pushes against that window, creating friction. It doesn't hold it very well. And there's a massive air gap between the 2 panes of glass, but the windows do open, which is cool, I guess. You can go to drive-thrus. It works just fine. You can get a drink through there. You don't have any cup holders, though. That's the problem. While we're at the door, you might also notice that I can just kind of open this door as far as I want to until it gets caught on the body panel, because there are no systems in this car keeping the door from opening further than it should. So these doors open very wide and also kind of open at this upward angle, kind of like half butterfly, maybe like dying butterfly doors. And yeah, they're very loud. The automotive enthusiasts here might have spotted something interesting. These taillights. These are from a Chevy Monza or Buick Skylark. These are not made by Unique Mobility, which is a pretty consistent theme around the car. This nice big rear glass hatch might look familiar. That's because it's from a Ford Pinto or a Mercury Bobcat, and you can tell that because it still says Mercury on the handle. Nice hatch, though. This lovely carpeted steering wheel might look familiar, and that's because they just took this straight out of a Volkswagen. And also, these floor mats. They just say GM right on them. They didn't even try. All these suspension components, including the braking components, are all Volkswagen, including the transmission, which is just a 4-speed Volkswagen manual transmission. But where they don't cheap out on just stealing other auto manufacturers' stuff is on the drivetrain. They custom designed the motor with General Motors, and they custom designed the controller and DC-DC and battery pack and charger and all that stuff with a company called Solek. So the drivetrain is actually very good, and they used parts from other auto manufacturers where it didn't matter as much. Now, by law, this car was required to have a window defroster. This was built in Colorado. We get snow. You want to be able to defrost your windows when it's snowing out. So maybe Volkswagen would take a heater out of maybe a Volkswagen or, you know, some other car company. That would be smart, right? Well, they did take the heater from another company, but it's a hairdryer. You can see if we look in the passenger side of the car and we just look up under the dash, that's just a Gillette hairdryer that's hardwired into the car. And you flip this little silver switch over here and it blows hot air out through these vents. It works, but it has asbestos in it, so I don't use it. You might have also noticed my sneaky little addition here. While this radio does work, believe it or not, from '79 it didn't have Bluetooth. So I added Bluetooth because I daily drive this car and I wanted Bluetooth. Up here in the driver's seat position, you get some pretty lackluster control. Over here we have our warning lights, which you can't really see, but it's hazard, seatbelt, something else, and motor temp. I don't know. They never come on anyway. These are your headlights controls, so low beams, high beams. This is your hazard control. Down here is your hood popper, your trunk popper. Up here you have your speedometer. This is your brake light indicator and your turn signal indicators. Over here, we have our DC amp gauge. We have our DC volt gauge. And what's actually interesting, you can see the little logo right in there, which is kind of cool. This is aftermarket. There used to just be an analog charge gauge here that never worked. So I replaced it with an actual way to monitor my batteries. And over here, you have more warning lights. So you got power on, battery reversed, low voltage, high voltage, arm chopper, logic off, and overheat. Arm chopper is pretty funny and cool. Logic off is not funny and cool because if that light turns on, it means your car is absolutely bricked. I've had that happen many times. Other than that, you have your parking brake, and then, unlike in any other electric car, 3 pedals, because it's a manual. Gated manual. On the steering wheel, you just have your blinkers, another control for high beams, even though you can also just use that, horn, and your wipers, which are the slowest things in existence. Yeah, this is max speed. They're good. Other than that, you get a single mirror on the driver's side. You do not get a passenger side mirror, which sucks because visibility is awful in the panel van. There's huge blind spots back there, although you do get a rear view mirror, which is fine, I guess. You also get sunshades, no vanity mirrors, and they also feel like they're crumbling inside, but I guess those are there. Also, every Electra came with a skylight, and this one is currently not in the car because I'm prepping it for paint. Now, of course, the thing that everyone really cares about, and I care about too because I daily drive this thing, is how does it drive? Well, first we put on our seatbelt, which is very important because, well, just look at the crash test. Yeah, it got 5 stars, but I don't think I'd survive that. But, just like in a normal car, you have a key, which is strangely Volkswagen branded. Wonder where they got that from. You turn it in the ignition. You hear the motor fan turn on. You can hear some contactors click. And now you're ready to go. Unlike in a normal manual car, the motor doesn't idle, so I don't have to use the clutch to start from a dead stop. I can start in first, but if I do, it gets a little jumpy. So I tend to start in second or third. Because this is an electric car, you can't stall it, so you can start in any gear you want. You also don't have to use the clutch when coming to a stop because this car has regenerative braking. I choose to use the clutch because I've been told by old Unique Mobility engineers that if you regen for too long, the car blows up. I mean, not literally, but like it breaks. And I've already fixed this car way too many times in my life to want to have to fix it again, although I definitely will. So now I'm gonna put in third because that's how I prefer to start this car. I can take my foot all the way off the clutch because there's no idle, and then we just drive it like an automatic. It's not exactly quiet in here, partly because it doesn't have a sunroof at the moment, but even when it does have that sunroof, it's still quite loud because of the gap in this window here is massive, and there's no sound deadening in this car. They didn't put any of that in. So it's quite loud. The motor is very loud, but I don't mind that part because it sounds awesome. It kind of sounds like someone's screaming. But I like when a car has a good motor noise. I hate when modern manufacturers cover up that beautiful motor sound. The car doesn't feel slow, even when starting in third. You can get up to 35 miles per hour, no problem. It's above 35 miles per hour that the car starts to feel a little slow, especially when going uphill. That 51 horsepower very quickly becomes apparent when you're trying to go up hills. This car does not have power brakes or power steering, but it doesn't need it, although power brakes might actually benefit this car quite a lot. They're a little on the scary side, but it works. Now I'm going to go up a hill, so I'm actually going to start in second. Clutch in for that. Let's see. This car does only weigh just over 2,000 pounds, so it's not the heaviest car on the market. The battery pack is equivalent to around 700 pounds of that. Now you can hear, maybe, hopefully, that the motor is kind of spooling up kind of hard, and this is where the manual transmission comes in. I need to go a little bit faster, and the motor's already kind of at top RPM. So we just shift up, just like in a normal car. Clutch in, feather it. You got the same clutch point like you'd have in a normal car. It's a very easy driving experience. And honestly, once you get the hang of it, you don't think about it. Like, it drives just like a normal manual, except you don't have to use the clutch at a dead stop. This car doesn't have a tachometer, but the way I kind of guess when I need to shift up or shift down is using the amp gauge and also just playing it by ear, seeing what feels right. There's not really a right answer, and like I said, it's an electric car. You're not going to stall it. Like, I guess the worst you can do is money shift it, but even then, the clutch will take a beating, but everything else will be fine. I'm sure my audio is absolutely garbage with the amount of wind noise that makes its way into this car, but there's not much I can do about that. That's just the way it was made. Some people might wonder, why do I daily drive this? I mean, I have better options. I have a Chevy Volt, and that's a great car. Well, the Chevy Volt's not as fun, and it's not as interesting. And the only reason people honk at me in the Chevy Volt is if I accidentally cut them off. People honk at me and give me thumbs up in this thing all the time because it's cool. If you ever see me driving around in public in this thing, wave me down, or if you see me at a charging station, I charge on public stations all the time. If you ever see me, just wave me down. I let anyone who comes up to it drive it. My philosophy with this car is you're not going to break anything that's not already broken. A little bit of self-promo. Myself and my two Electreks will be at Electrify Expo Denver this year. So if you're in the Denver area from July 13th to 14th, come stop by, sit in it. I'll let you rev the motor if you want. Have a good time. People always expect it to be a grand experience driving this car, and so did I when I first bought it. It's just comfortable. Like, honestly, this is a very nice driving car. It's very smooth. It drives exactly how you'd expect it to. It would benefit from a little bit more power, but it doesn't 100% need that. I've taken it on the highway a couple times, and it does fine. It keeps up with traffic if you're in the slow lane. It doesn't feel sketchy on the highway either. You'd be surprised. It's fairly stable. The suspension is very floaty. I don't know if that's how it was from factory or if it's just because the suspension is getting old, but it is very floaty, which I don't complain about because I like a little bit of a relaxing, floaty suspension. The one issue that I did bring up that I would like to address in the future is the massive blind spots in the back of this car. Yeah, I tend to just choose a lane and stick in it. I will never change lanes, and I hate backing out of places because I can't see anything at the back. So it's an issue. Get a little bit higher speed here. Like I said, it feels weirdly stable at high speeds. Like, it doesn't feel concerning. Like, it drives straight despite not having an alignment in probably some 40 years. It doesn't wander at all. The steering is pretty tight and responsive. This floaty suspension doesn't really hurt it at all. It just drives fine, even at high speeds. Like, this car is surprisingly refined. And like I said, this is where Unique Mobility spent a lot of their time and effort, was in the drivetrain, making this a very drivable car. Of course, the price of $82,000 when this thing was new was a little bit much for what you're getting, but nobody really bought these things anyway, so who cares? Like I said, I've never done a range test on the new battery, but I've taken it on a 33-mile loop. That's as far as I've ever taken it, and the battery pack didn't budge. And based on the efficiency numbers I got on that drive, and I was pushing it pretty hard on that drive, I could get around 130 miles on a full charge on this battery pack, assuming that the capacity of the COTA modules is the same as they were from out of factory, but they're lithium iron phosphate, so they're pretty stable and tend to last a long time. So I'm not too worried about it, but it's not like I'm doing any road trips in this thing. But theoretically, if I wanted to, I could drive this up to Denver and plug in up there and then drive it back. I'm not gonna do that because I don't trust this thing to do long highway stretches because I'm afraid of it overheating. But yeah, overall driving this car as a daily is not bad at all. It's fun to drive. It's relaxing. It's smooth. It's not like I'm freaking out when I hop behind the wheel. I've never had any serious issues with something becoming dangerous in the car. Sure, I've had the battery die on me one time when it was running on the old lead acid batteries, and I had the DC-DC converter die the other day. But like, it's never a dangerous issue. It's never really a big issue. I mean, worst comes to worst, I have to jump start at 12 volts or plug it in at a public charging station. Never had any major safety issues with this car, which the same cannot be said about my Commuta car, which was made in the same era, because it caught fire. It's fine. It's still fine, but it did catch fire. Not this car, the Commuta car. This car's never caught fire. That I know of. I got the fire extinguisher just in case. I owe a lot to this car. When I first bought this car, I was a film student in Los Angeles. I didn't know anything about electric cars. I couldn't tell you what a BMS was. I barely knew anything about electricity. I thought just the more voltage you had, the more range you would get. Yeah, I did not know anything about electric cars, but through working on this electric car, I learned a lot. I met a lot of great people, and I was actually able to go to college to work on my degree in electrical engineering, all because of this car. So I know it's a little sentimental and cheesy to say, but this car has done a lot for me, and I love it. And now I get paid to talk about it. Like, I'm getting paid to do this. Like, whether you like this video or not, I'm getting paid. How crazy is that? Younger me would be proud that I'm a YouTuber. Old me is indifferent. That's going to be it for this video. If you guys enjoyed, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, and leaving a comment. I do read every comment, even the mean ones. And they hurt my feelings, but I read them. But yeah, that's my Electrek. If you want to know more about Electreks, I run a website called uniquemobility.org. There you can find stuff like the history of these vehicles, all in depth. You can find all the documentation for these vehicles, like if you want to read through the owner's manual for yourself, you can find it there. And you can find a registry of all 13 cars that still exist to this day. You can also find more information about these cars on my own personal channel called Electrek Garage, spelled like the car, where you can see the process that it took to replace the battery pack in this car with a modern system. A ton of fun. I love making these kind of videos for you guys. This is my dream car. A controversial dream car, but my dream car nonetheless. Anyway, I'll see you all next week. Love ya.